So you've been doing an appearance here or there. What's that been like? I know you did one WrestleMania weekend.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
It was cool. It was good. WrestleMania Weekend was great. A lot of people that I knew, a lot of people I haven't seen in a long time were there. Some great new people that I met. I got to hang out with Chris Masters and Carlito and Mickey James, and I got to meet her husband, Nick Aldis Magnus, who's fantastic, and their little boy. So it was really cool. Rod Conway. I mean, I know I'm forgetting people, but it was really cool to reconnect with some people who, I hadn't seen in a long time. It was also a little scary. I saw a lot of my friends, especially this past weekend, who aren't doing fantastic after wrestling. I know, a lot of them have some head injuries or some I don't know. It was a little weird. It was a little troubling. Some of my friends just weren't doing as good as I thought they would be, but overall it was really cool. It was a good time.
Now, remember that you told me that one of the reasons you got out of wrestling, you were perpetually in pain as well. When you see people that you said aren't doing as well, does it put your situation in perspective? Does it make you feel more thankful that you got out when you did?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it makes me thankful that it could have been worse. I feel like I got out in time where, whatever, not that to say that I didn't have any issues after wrestling. I definitely did. And now I didn't get out scot-free, but seeing a couple of the guys, some of the things that they go through on a daily basis, the memory loss and some of the other struggles that they have, it did definitely put it in perspective. I think I got lucky in the sense that I've kept most of my ability and wits about me, but it just because it's been 11 years since I've been in the ring, so it's been, for some of these guys, it's been 10 or 11 years since I've seen them, and a lot has changed in that time. So, but overall, like I said, it was a good experience, and it was really nice to connect with some people who I hadn't seen in a long time.
You also reunited with your former tag team partner Davari for some of these appearances. How was that?
It was great to see Sean. It's always good to see him. We hadn't really talked in a while, so it was nice to get back together and hang out and spend a little time together. It felt like old times.
Now, as I did a lot of research leading up to the article I did, one of the things I noticed was the angle in which you were in the ring with your lawyer. Do you know that your lawyer is now under WWE contract as a performer?
I did not. Who is he?
Tommaso Ciampa. He's an NXT wrestler. Really, really good, actually. It's crazy to see how that comes full circle. That the guy that portrayed your lawyer is actually a really good NXT talent now.
Wait a minute. That was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Huh. I had no idea. Well, good for him.
Yeah, I was looking through, and I watched that segment, and I was like, "That's Tommaso Ciampa," and there he was. I think he was 21 then, which at 21, I think he looked older than he does now at 31. So he's just one of those guys.
I was gonna say I don't remember him looking so young, but
yeah, it's pretty crazy to think. So you've been making these appearances. Has anybody tried to get you to wrestle yet?
Yeah, but I'm just not wrestling, and it's not that I don't want to. I just don't feel like I'd be capable of performing at even close to the level that I used to. Once you're out of the ring, especially for 10 years, you're out of the ring for 6 months, you've got a lot of rust, let alone 10 years, I'd probably break my neck. So,
So, is there any interest for you to do anything, like any type of, like, I don't want to say in-ring action, but like if you manage Davari at an event or anything, is that ever a possibility?
Yeah, slight, but, after last weekend, and it's difficult for me to take time off. I work 50, 60 hours a week, so it's fun, but at the same time, it's difficult for me to do that. So I don't know if I'm not too eager to get out there and do any more appearances for a while.
When I wrote that article, I mean, I thought that, honestly, one of the quotes it's one of the most powerful quotes I've ever been given for a story, period. You said that we despise the traits in others that we see in ourselves. I think that, that's really, that's one hell of a reflection of the Muhammad Hassan character. Obviously, there's been a lot of tragedies involving things that end up being turned into xenophobic fears. How do you think that character would go down today? Or could it?
That's a good question. I honestly don't know. I think that today, especially like what we had talked about in our interview, especially how it's escalated since Orlando with Donald Trump and how it's become such a hot button topic for the current presidential race, I don't think they could do it. I think it would get out of hand. It would depend on the person playing it. I would think that at this moment in time, that character would get out of hand, and it would not lead to debates. It would lead to potential violence. It would lead to some things that aren't necessarily compatible with WWE's current line of programming.
And that's weird, because today WWE's having a hard time getting people to care about some of their main event programs. And this is a thing that, would probably evolve or devolve, however you want to look at it, into the types of heat that you hear about from the 70s and 60s and things like that, where people were getting batteries thrown at them and things like that. One of I remember somebody sent me a tweet after the story, and they said, if Muhammad Hassan and Donald Trump were face-to-face in a ring, who would get booed and who would get cheered? Who do you think?
I think Donald Trump would get cheered.
especially in the South.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think he's done a great job of figuring out who his audience is and figuring out what he has to say to appeal to him. I mean, I would hope that a lot of what he says isn't exactly what he plans to do, because a lot of it is not how a president of the United States should conduct themselves. But I think that, in a wrestling ring, I think Donald Trump's going to get cheered more often than he's going to get booed, because that's his demographic. Those are the people he's been trying to reach. And I don't mean that in any negative sense, but, he knows who he's catering to, with the gun-toting, use the word again, xenophobic, red-blooded Americans who feel like our country has taken a turn towards the left. And so I think that, Donald Trump would probably win that. He'd be over.
Now, there were rumors of the past week, well, not really rumors, some of the guys confirmed it, that WWE has reached out to guys like MVP and Steven Richards and I think Carlito. Have they ever reached out to you for any reason, either for WWE Network appearances or one-offs or anything of that nature?
No, they really haven't.
Does that surprise you, considering the heat behind that? And I mean, still, obviously, your character was pretty intriguing. Not pretty intriguing, really intriguing.
Nah, it doesn't really, because they broke ties with the character. And the character was only on TV for a short period of time. I mean, you look at Carlito or Steven Richards or MVP. I mean, I think that those guys are still active, whereas I'm not, and it's pretty well known that I'm not. So, I mean, I'm not surprised by that at all.
Now, I like to do a segment with my interview guests. As you know, Wikipedia is the most reliable source on the internet. Yeah. I'm sure that you encourage all of these minds that you mold to only use Wikipedia. So we're going to play Wikipedia Fact or Fiction.
All right.
We're going to go through the Mark Capani Wikipedia. First off, they spelled your name wrong.
Yep.
That's not getting off to a good start.
No.
It says that during your WWE run, you were 6'2", 245.
I wish. 6 foot, maybe 6 foot and a half. I think the heaviest I was it was maybe 225, 230.
Yeah, that's one we get a lot out of pro wrestling, which isn't a big secret.
No, they do that everywhere. They do that NFL, NBA. They always beef it up at least an inch or two and add 20 pounds.
It says, after retiring, you moved to L.A. to be an actor and screenwriter.
Yeah, I did a little acting. I didn't do too much of it. I got into the writing and the production end of it, did some small things, nothing, really memorable that stands out. But that I would say that is accurate.
You were trained by Nightmare Danny Davis and Nick Densmore.
That is true. And Jim Cornette and Rob Conway. I saw Jim Cornette last weekend. I told him, thank you, because I never got a chance. Thank you for everything you did for me. And I told him to make sure he told Danny the same thing, because I haven't seen Danny in a decade. But, yep, Danny Davis, Nick Densmore was my primary trainer, and Rob Conway, and a lot of other people along the way that helped out. So I'm very grateful to all of them. And
you later worked with Nick Densmore on the main roster briefly.
Yeah, we did. We did that thing at WrestleMania. It was really cool.
So, I mean, that had to be an interesting situation. You get trained by a guy. The next thing you know, you are in a main event angle, a huge main event angle, with him at WrestleMania. That's kind of a cool story.
Yeah, it was because I've always looked up to Nick. So it was definitely a big moment for me.
It says that one of your signature moves was nicknamed the finishing touch.
Yeah, OVW, the finishing touch. Yep. And I don't think anybody uses it. I thought it was a pretty good move, but yep, that was true.
Yeah, I remember that move. I just wasn't sure if that's what you had you called it or not. Let's see here. The reason that the WWE dropped the character was due to increasing public pressure, and they sent you and Davari back to developmental, or at least tried.
That is partially true. They really wasn't a discussion to send me back to developmental. You know what? I bet if that was something I wanted to do, I could have done. But at the time, like we talked about the last time I spoke with you, I just wasn't interested in doing it anymore.
You were pegged to defeat Batista for the world title at SummerSlam.
That's what I heard. I heard that from, I can't remember who, but the idea was, obviously a screw job on The Undertaker at the Great American Bash, because, Undertaker is one of the most over wrestlers ever. And then I think the big FU was the Arab winning the belt against the hometown boy in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. So I can't confirm that for 100%, but as far as I was told, that was what was going to happen.
So were you told that by those behind the scenes in WWE, or was that something that you heard afterwards?
I think I knew beforehand. That was what I was told before everything went south with the character.
And was that something that was like in your mind when you decided to leave? Like, I could have had that run, or was that something you weren't really that concerned about?
I wasn't that concerned because coming from OVW, being trained more old school with Jimmy and Danny. And Rip Rogers, belts are belts. We never put a lot of emphasis on belts. In fact, they would always say you put belts on the guys who aren't over. The guys who are over don't need a belt. So honestly, it wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah, it'd be cool to have my name in the history book of world champions, but it's nothing I really dwell on.
And the last one is one that I wrote down but has been removed. But I'm still going to ask it anyway. It says, as of 2013, Kapani has become a recruiter on the independent wrestling circuit, which I feel like you would have mentioned at some point.
Yeah, very false. There's not much of an independent circuit where I live. So.
And before we go, I got to ask you, as I ask everybody who has ever been through OVW, do you have any crazy-ass Rip Rogers stories?
Everybody's got crazy-ass Rip Rogers stories. Oh, God. Rip is a tremendous wrestling mind. He is, and many people have called him one of the most underrated wrestlers in the history of the business, and I'd probably agree with that. Definitely by far one of the strangest men in the history of the business. We all had Rip Rogers stories. But he, honestly, he's one of the best trainers I've ever worked under. I'll never forget when I said to Rip before I got called up, and something like, I am not ready. And he's like, fuck, of course not. You're not ready. You're never fucking ready. It's throw you in the fire. It made me feel better to know that I wasn't alone in having a little bit of trepidation about the big dance, because Rip was like, yeah, of course you're not. But he said it in such a way where it was like nobody is. But I don't know about my favorite Rip Rogers story. It's not funny, but it is, like, just because it's Rip. I think he got, I don't know if he's still married to the lady, but he got into a fight with his wife or his ex-wife, and she, like, ran him over with her car. And I know that doesn't sound funny. Maybe you have to be a wrestler to laugh about it or know Rip. But I could just imagine Rip pissing her off so bad to the point where she was like, I don't give a fuck if I go to jail. I am hitting this motherfucker. And that's why it makes me laugh, because I know Rip, and he definitely knows how to do that. But, hey, yeah, you could write a book about the crazy Rip Rogers stories. I watched someone posted, I think Johnny Cheater, one of my friends, posted on Facebook a shoot interview with Rip Rogers, and it was like 20 minutes long, and I was locked in, just dying, listening to him tell all these stories. He is hysterical. And like I said, he really knows the business.
He's one of the most colorful personalities in wrestling history. Like, I'm collecting these stories just so when I eventually interview him, I can, because I mean, you know, he loves his students, obviously, and that's the one thing I hear is that he's really hard on his students, but that's because, you know, he really it is that he wants the best for them type of thing.
Yeah. He's hard on him because he doesn't know any other way, but when you sit down and you talk to him one-on-one, you realize that he does it with the best of intentions. He does it because he cares about the business. He doesn't want any phony bullshit in the business. I think first and foremost, he's hard on him because he doesn't want to see, like he would say in Rip's words, dumb motherfuckers in the ring. And so he makes sure that if you're going to be in there, you're going to respect what you're doing and you're going to respect the guy in the ring with you. So, yeah, he's hard on guys, but, you know, that's Rip. And once you learn Rip's way, you know, you respect him for that.